What's up? Yep, I'm up an hour early. This is Sunday morning, time change, extra hour sleep. Guess what my first thought was today, right when I realized I had an extra hour? It's like, how do I get a jump on the day? That's what I initially think of. Like, if somebody gives me a free gift, extra hour, I don't think take a little extra breather. I don't think stay in bed a little bit longer. I think, how can I get ahead of the rest of the world? Welcome to Pandemic Edition, number 8, talking about the Sabbath. I'm going to give you a quote this morning. This is from a book called The Power of Full Engagement by Jim Lair. I recommend you all get it. It will actually help you. In this book, he says, to be at our best, we must learn how to rhythmically spend and renew energy. Okay, don't forget that. He says the richest, happiest, and most productive lives are characterized by the ability to fully engage in the challenge at hand, but also to disengage periodically and seek renewal. Great leaders are stewards of their personal and organizational energy. Okay. Second quote, performance, health, and happiness are grounded in the skillful management of energy. So, a little background on Hugh Halter. My dad was out of work from my 8th grade year in middle school to about now. So about, at the time it was, most of my junior high school, college years. We lived in the suburbs. He just he was pretty high up in the education industry in Oregon, and then he got laid off during the recession of the 80s, and just being out of work, we lost our really nice house in the suburbs. We lost everything. The stress eventually caused mom and dad to get divorced my sophomore year in college. And he still has not found gainful employment. He's 83 and he still gets up early. He works reading, studying, but he just cannot seem to just chill. I try to remind him, Dad, you're almost 90. You should come off of this. And he just Hugh Tom, I got things to do. And so he passed down the legacy of what we would classically call workaholism. I obviously picked it up because of the anxiety of our family needing somebody to work. So I went to work full time as a sophomore in high school. Worked 100 hours a week during the summers at a fireworks warehouse to try to get enough money to get through college. And then in college, took up a house painting trade. And I know I've shared some of my story with you guys on that. And that was just this constant anxiety and fear of providing. And, early in those days, it wasn't just to get through a private college. It was to try to send money back to my family, my younger sister, my mom, and stuff like that. So I very naturally took on my dad's workaholism. If you know anybody that knows me, they will generally reference in Hugh Halter's persona that I work a lot. And so what we're talking about this morning is really a change of belief system. And I'm not teaching you guys like the expert. I'm still in renovation mode. I actually think I'm 50 times better than I used to be. And so I can talk to you about transformation of your heart, but I am not done. I'm still doughy in the middle on this one. Okay. So clearly me getting up this morning early gives you an idea, thinking of what in fact, I'm doing this video to get a jump on it so I can chill out the rest of the day. But so we talked about last week, Jesus teaching us that the true work is to believe him. And so a disciple is somebody that is growing from unbelief in areas of our lives to belief. And so really our spiritual growth is based on that we believe more about what Jesus believes than we did a year ago. And probably the hardest thing for a lot of men to really believe Jesus on is the issue of his provision and his care for us, that he actually understands and even gives us the responsibility to provide. But to not go berserk on that and believe that we are our providers, but to learn to trust God, that somehow in his kingdom economy, that in his marketplace, the more we trust him, the easier it comes to us. And so So Isaiah 58, we're just wrapping that up, finishing. And remember, it's a reboot on all of life. It's a reboot to help us get Zoe, abundant, kingdom type of life in our life. It's also a national scripture about how literally a new kingdom can restore a world. And so it is challenging us to pay attention to the most important parts of our lives. And most of this chapter has been about the recovery of justice and mercy in the world, right? And then at the very end, it brings up the Sabbath. It really only brings up two things. So Sabbath hits it pretty heavy. 10 Commandments, God's trying to frame what a successful world might look like. And he gives us 10 little, hey, do these 10 things. You're generally going to live better and life will go better than if you don't. And number 4 is to keep the Sabbath. So early on, it's one of the top 10. Here in Isaiah 58, it's top 2. But as we go through Sabbath stuff, don't think like it's about the day, and don't think it's about Sunday, because remember in Colossians, it said this, so don't let anyone judge you anymore based on what you eat or what you drink, or about your festivals or about your Sabbath. So early on, the Jesus story is that he frees us from these empty religious days or religious ceremonies. So he's not saying like, get your Sunday back in order. It could be any day of the week. He's really talking about Sabbath spirituality, where we don't let anybody dictate how we're going to live. We now kind of beat to a different drum. We now trust the Lord in everything that he asks us or invites us into. And one of them is this sort of season of rest and work. And so I'm going to go down to the very end of Isaiah 58. Verse 13 and 14, he says, if you watch your step on the Sabbath and don't use my holy day for personal advantage, if you treat the Sabbath as a day of joy, God's holy day as a celebration, if you honor it by refusing business as usual or making money running here and there, then you will be free to enjoy God. That's maybe the great gospel invite, is to just live a life where we enjoy God. Oh, and I'll make you ride high and soar above it all. I'll make you feast on the inheritance of your ancestor Jacob. Yes, God says it is so. And so it's a great invite to begin to, maybe some of you have been frustrated that I've taken so long to get to the point, but if you notice, I was really trying to get us to be reflective and keep going over the same thing until it begins to hit our lives. And this is another one of those opportunities. The quotes I gave you are from that book, Power of Full Engagement. I've been studying that for years by Jim Lair. And as you go through that, maybe add that to your repertoire for reading over the holidays. There are a couple things that they bring up. Now, these guys were sports psychologists, so they are Jesus guys, but they were trying to help elite athletes maximize their performance. And some things that they found, and then they applied it to all of life, was that elite athletes, Jack Nicklaus they bring up as an example, had these abilities to highly focus or intensify their focus during the most important times, like right before the shot, right during the shot. But then they also equally had this ability to disconnect and actually come off of that. They were originally studying tennis players, world-class tennis players, and they said the ones that really did well, especially over the long haul, were the ones that after the point, they would look down and stare at their racket and almost disengage, and then they would re-engage. And so the power of full engagement is to teach that the best way to live life, the most productive way, is when you're working, you're highly focused, you're highly efficient, but you also at the same time are taking these hourly, daily, weekly rhythms of resting your heart rate. That's why, like in CrossFit that I do, if you're a middle-aged guy and you're getting fat, you're trying not to get fat, oftentimes you'll read that high-intensity training is your only way through, because high-intensity training retrains your heart, and the training is based on the heart rate dropping suddenly. So the high-impact training is, they will have you do 100 5 thrusters or run up a staircase, and your heart rate will fly up. and then they try to bring you back down, and just kind of repeating the cycle of high intensity and then rest. And they find that in any discipline, in any aspect of life, executives that do this, executives that instead of just burning their staff for 12 hours in a long meeting, will take every hour, they'll take a 15-minute break. And they find that it's about 10 times more productive when you have momentary or consistent little breathers that somehow our heart, our adrenaline, our mind, and the shutting down or quieting or slowing then allows us to really be much more efficient and productive. So they talk about rituals of recoup, which I want to talk about next week. They talk about letting your heart rest. A good way to think about the Sabbath opportunity that God asks for us is really to let our heart rest. Our hearts is that deep inner part of us. When you feel anxiety, the scriptures would say that's your heart. And you feel there's a connection deeply between the physiology of your heart and the physiology of your soul, of your spirit. So when your spirit is out of line, when you're anxious and you're having or on the front end of a panic attack, or you feel your anger and your rage begin to, like you're just trying to stuff it down, you can feel it coming up. That's an issue of your heart. And so Isaiah 58, why does he say, if you watch your step on the Sabbath? So what was steps all about? Steps was about physical movement, right? So the Jewish people, they would tell you could only take so many steps. And so they would actually judge each other by the number of steps that they would take. So he says, if you watch it, like watch the physical part, the actual physical rest, something will begin to change in you in a positive way when you stop actually moving. So there's a law of what these guys refer to as the law of diminishing returns. That's when if you keep just working, there's a breakdown. There's a breakdown at a cellular structure physically. So, and you guys know this. If you just don't sleep, if there's no physical rest, you can't get over an injury. You can't, or you actually get more injured. But the way that we typically think is the longer and the more sustained we work, the more we'll get accomplished. Law of diminishing returns says, no, it's the exact opposite. You actually don't need to work nearly as hard as you think, that the rest periods are actually what allow our bodies to heal, allow our minds to heal. I don't know, this is like a little Hugh Halter thing, but there's times where I can't focus at all if I'm writing a book or something like that. And it's just literally the getting out of the position of sitting at a table or something like that just sort of works. These guys in this book talk about how when you're under physical duress, and they're really talking about, again, not just high impact or high level athletes in the middle of a really physical situation. They really talk about executives, that when executives are under the stress, that's a physical stress. And so if you don't figure out some way to trust the process, that's I think what God's trying to say to us in the Sabbath. You got to trust the process, like that you can do more with me helping you because your heart and your mind, your breathing is actually calm. You'll actually hear me more, and I found that to be completely true. That's why even back when they're writing this, most people that are working, most men that are working, are actually working physically. So the Sabbath was about coming off the physical rest. Many of us today, probably many of you watching this, your work is not physical per se, but it's mental, and mental is physical, okay? So if you're on the computer all day, you're trying to manage people or work the process, it's the same thing. So if you cannot come off the cell phone and check emails or texts, if you feel an anxiety over somehow every hour or every 2 seconds you have to keep flipping the phone over, that's the same thing. Like you got to watch your step on the Sabbath. There's got to be some time where you literally, probably for a 12 to 24 hour period, can trust and just come off of that stuff. And then, so then he says, and if you don't use my holy day for personal advantage, what is that all about? Personal advantage. That's like the constant need to just keep going ahead. A consistent fight for my wife and I growing up when we got the kids in the minivan heading for a vacation was that I liked the feeling of passing people. I didn't have to be flying by them. I just need a constant, like getting ahead. So when the kids have to like take a leak or something, or they poop their pants, I'm like, we'll be there in about 7 hours, kids. Just suck it up. Here's a bottle. Try to go in that. My wife would just be like, you've got a problem. So that's what that is all about, is when you go, I need 7 days a week to get ahead. If you really believe that you're going to get ahead working 7 days a week, 24/7, you are probably not believing what God believes about you and about what he can do in your life. So workaholism isn't really about surviving like we think. So I thought I worked this hard because I just had to. Workaholism is really about getting ahead. And it's based on the emotion of fear, and it's also based on the issue of self-worth. Somehow our identity is tied to what we produce. And so the Sabbath, when the Lord's giving us the opportunity to change the way we think and live in the world, to reorient our lives, he's really trying to get at the core issue for a man. You don't have to fear nearly what you think you do, because I'm actually watching over you. I love you, and I do interact with your business and your work and your profit and your loss. And you also are my son. I don't need you to get ahead of everybody else. It has nothing to do with how I feel about you. And so God's constantly trying to get just his pure love across to us, that we're right where he wants us to be. And if we never produced another dollar, he would love us the same. And so, that's why I think the Sabbath was probably so critical. It's like, it doesn't matter what time of the world God's calling us back to the Sabbath. It always really speaks to us, because nothing's really changed in the heart of man. He's, as one writer, Walter Brueggemann, said, the Sabbath was a form of resistance. Okay, it literally was a form of resistance. That the empire lived a certain way, and it caused this incredible rush of intensity and fear to rule the hearts of people. And all of a sudden, God's people are given this opportunity to take a day and chill. And he said that it was a resistance against the empire. And it was our primary witness to the world. Isn't that like crazy? Maybe that's why God puts it in the top too. Like, if you want the world to respect the Christian movement again, if you really take care of the poor and the oppressed, and if you can rest, if you're a restful community, if you're able to easily stop and be available and make eye contact with people, and even be able to sit down for 45 minutes and have a very engaged, intense conversation, you will find that people will just go, you're from another world. And that was the part of the Sabbath, is we were going to be, and we were being built into an alternative counterculture movement of people. And our ability to rest our hearts, rest our feet, was our primary witness to the world. So I don't know, it's an amazing opportunity. I'm going to end with this quote. Accountability is a means of regularly facing the truth about the gap between our intentions and our actual behavior. One more time. Accountability, the reason why you would get with other men, why you would be a part of a Christian community, is about accountability to a better way of life. Accountability is a means of regularly facing the truth about the gap between our intentions, what we'd really like to have in our life. I mean, which of us wouldn't want to live a more peaceful, stressless, or more stress-free, healthy way of life? Of course. But we need some accountability to get between these intentions and our actual behavior. So if you're like me and you have a little stress in your life, maybe really process, and don't try to get past the scripture. Don't try to, hey, halter, when are we moving on to the next thing? If you've nailed the peaceful living, the ability to watch God bring it to you instead of you just keep, producing it all, then maybe there's an opportunity this week to really get into the life of God. That's what this is all about. The gospel is the life of God given to us. And again, it's a narrow way. Just a few guys are going to finally get it, but it's there. It's available to all, but few find it. So May you rest today, and may you process and reflect upon God's peaceful way for you. So, love you guys. Have a great week. See you.